I engaged with Samba on Twitter earlier this week, and they were responsive, and we had a good discussion, both publicly and sent a few DMs back and forth. And I asked, I'm like, look, I said, my gripe is that, and I've kind of been calling them out for a while. And the video I did before this happened, like the day before, I did 2 Ahsoka videos. I had one that I put out the night before when the Samba number came out, and then I did another one the next day, turned around because this 14 million figure came out. In the meantime, the first video I did, same thing. I said, hey, Samba, I said, I got a problem with this. You're saying 1.2 million, but that's over 6 days. That's the first time Samba has ever given us a 6-day metric. Everything up to that point.
4 or 5?
3,
3,
4.
okay.
It used to be 3, then it went to 4, then it went to 5. Now it's 6. And they said, and I get it, they said, well, you know, we were doing 5 because it's based on the release window. We try to measure every show at least with its first weekend in it, which I said, okay.
That makes sense, yeah.
I understand. I said, but here's the issue. Can y'all go back and give me adjusted numbers for Mando Season 2 and Andor and this and that, and I think Book of Boba Fett and everything else? I said, for 6 days. Well, apparently, the same time that Samba and I were talking, Deadline dropped a press release with those Samba numbers, so they were able to throw it at me real quick. And I kind of asked, I was like, that's funny. I said, I put out a video last night where I was questioning you, and then today they immediately responded to me on Twitter when I asked them something, so I'm like,
okay.
Okay.
That is interesting, for sure.
But the point is that now that we have the numbers, like you said, the comparative reference is what's important.
Yeah.
So for Samba TV, 1.2 million for Andor, even with the extra day thrown in, because it was so dead by that point. It's like the 6th day of a video on YouTube. It's like it's not, probably 99% of the time, it's probably not adding much of anything to the tally at that point, unless you got something wild going on. 1.2 million for Ahsoka, 1.7 million for Book of Boba Fett, and then of course you had Obi-Wan, 2.4 million. And you had Mando Season 2, which I think we extrapolated out as best we could tell. They said they didn't have that one. They didn't have the numbers on that one. And they also told me that the problem is, since that one was so much older, the number of households they've added to the system since then have grown so much. So the numbers have become more... The sample size has gotten bigger so that the data is more accurate. Now, one thing they did tell me was that they're not just counting, this is how many people that are on their system that they measure. That's a big part of it, but they do extrapolate from that sample size. This is how many households were watching this. And remember, and this has always been the case, on TV. Now, if somebody's watching this on an iPad or a cell phone or a computer, that's not being captured by Samba.
Sure.
So this is strictly, I sat in my living room and watched the television, to watch this show.
Right,
so,
and they've got, what, 26% of all smart TVs?
Got this huge... No,
and then they extrapolate that out as if,
for everybody who elected to opt in.
Right, they're doing a multiplier for the devices that they are in the dark on. Now, let's say this, too, because it does get even more complicated, folks out there, if you're wanting to understand this. Here's how hard it is to keep track of all of it. Disney has their own proprietary system for how they're measuring the views and putting that out to the public. They actually know the real stats. They could give that to us. They choose not to.
Right.
Nielsen captures this by the total minutes watched all across the country, and they do that using Nielsen families, where they extrapolate out based on what those Nielsen families say was on their screen. And then Samba TV, they're counting the households based on who watched for 5 minutes straight.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes in, you get counted.
Everybody's using something slightly different.
Yeah.
Right? Now, in theory, given the fact that we know that studios like Disney and Warner Brothers, Paramount, Peacock, doesn't matter, throw them all in there, they're all in the same bucket. They're usually going to be unlikely to deliver actual numbers. I wish they would, but they're the only people that actually have the real numbers inside. So throw that out the window for a second. Probably the next closest thing in theory is going to be, I'd say it's a relative tie with the way they do it, although I do trust Nielsen more because of the history, but I do really like the way Samba captures the data. It's virtually infallible because they're literally monitoring what is on your screen. There is a chip that looks at what is on your television screen right now. And it says, oh, this is Ahsoka. Oh, this is this show. This is that show. Did you watch it for at least 5 minutes? Bang, that's a view. Now, the problem is like I said, their sample size, we don't really know 100%. And we don't really know exactly how their algorithm works. And to be fair, we don't really know exactly how Nielsen extrapolates all of their data out from how they get their stuff. But Samba's just... The problem is when Samba releases the data publicly and we go from 3 days to 4 days to 6 days to 5 days, it's like, well, shit. I mean, pardon my French, like, what are we actually looking at?
Yeah, for sure.
And when you go back and you look at, okay, give me like a big show. What was a big show that Samba measured that we all knew was a big show? Well, okay, 4.5 million or whatever it was for Stranger Things season 4.
Yep.
And then 4.5 million, almost 4.8 million, whatever it was,
for
House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, them's was big shows. And then we look
Huge,
at then we look at the best thing that Disney's been able to muster has been Mando, which is definitely on a decline in terms of viewership. And as I pointed out, the biggest problem with Disney Plus is the fact that, the biggest shows on Disney Plus happened 2 years ago consistently.
I know, it's wild.
Loki and everything else. Disney Plus had 30 million subs when Mando Season 2 premiered. They have 45 million now, and I'm talking about North America. So you've got a growth of 50% in subscribership in the U.S. alone. Let's forget India for a second. That's a problem. Forget other international core markets. Just the U.S., okay? Or North America, so U.S. and Canada. What are these guys watching? We maybe had 15 million new subscribers in the last 2 years, and all they're doing is they're buying it for their kids so they can sit and watch Bluey.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know, because that's the only thing that shows up on Nielsen's charts each and every week. The point is, and this is where kind of the lawsuit goes into with Disney and what the investors are crying about, and I think to a large degree rightfully, all this money that's getting spent to create the products, everything you and I have been talking about so far, the Marvel shows, the Star Wars shows, everything there, where we're just going, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't suck that bad. It's like that's what they're spending all this money on. And of course, the other part of the problem with Disney Plus, folks, the reason why it's in so much debt, they're buying all of their own content when it leaves the theaters, instead of licensing it out like they used to.
Yep.
Netflix used to stroke them a check for $1 billion for all that Marvel stuff and for
airplanes, hotels, like all that. Yeah.
Now it's
Zaslav was kind of right, when he said that, and it's like it's weird. What up, Jay?